Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Testing. Just checking to see if you can hear me and see me out there. Just trying to get everything set up here. There we go. Check 1 2. Check. Hey, Joe. Awesome. Hey, Gene. Hey, Mike. Hey, Randolph, RJ, Jerry. Cool. All right, awesome. Ricky. Good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, so I thought I would just log in a couple minutes early. We can go ahead and get started. Usually I try and get done, usually around 1:45, so I can get ready for the next thing and go from there. But, hey, Rich. Hey, Francis. Awesome. Awesome, you guys are all here. This is great. Cool. And you can hear me okay? Hopefully. Hear my guitar okay? All right. Good. This is good. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll just start off. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them out in the chat. I've got some questions on the sheet that on the questionnaire that I send out all the time. But yeah, just anything. Shoot any questions you've got about anything guitar related at all, and I'll try and get to everything as much as I can, and then I'll get to the questions on the sheet as well. So one question I did see from Darren. I don't see that Darren is here, but I will of course post this in the VIP group. But Darren had mentioned, he said, I saw that you played all the Black Spirit stuff. He said you've tried the combo and the head, which is right here, and then the floorboard, and which one do I like the most? Hey, Larry. And to be honest, I like them all. The floorboard is really, really convenient, the floor pedal, just because everything's built right into it. So if you're planning on doing a lot of stage things and stuff like that, it's very, very nice for that. The head is quite nice for, like, I don't know. I as far as the sounds go between the combo and the floorboard, they really don't sound that much different, but they do because, like, the combo, you're running it through the ported, cabinet that they have in the speaker, and it's louder than crap. I don't normally use that. So, and it's quite heavy. I like this because it's really, really light. And then I'll run it into a 112 or a 212 or whatever it is I've got. And the floorboard or the floor pedal is really cool. And honestly, it sounds pretty much just like this. So I didn't really notice any significant difference there. I think it's more convenience. I think it's more what it is that you're looking at. This whole amp thing, I'm just on a I've been trying so many different things, and not because I do or don't like Hughes and Kettner. I love Hughes and Kettner, but just for different convenience levels. Many of you have seen my different videos on, different kinds of software that you can run. They're called VSTs, or plugins you can run on your computer, different kinds of things like that. And there's so many things out there that are really cool, but the most important thing is you got to figure out what your use for it is. What do you want? Something that is stage only? Do you want something that's for recording? Do you want something that kind of suffices both situations? And there's just a whole lot of stuff to talk about. I've been messing around with a bunch of different kinds of pedals, Kemper stuff, Axe Effect stuff, just all kinds of different things out there. So let me see what we got here. Anyone know where I can get backing tracks to songs besides guitar backing tracks? There's a bunch of stuff, like Elevate backing tracks. What are they called again? Elevate jam tracks. Let me get some of my window is so full of stuff here. Elevated jam tracks. They've got some really great stuff, and there's all kinds of different things like that. But I know they go through Bandcamp, and there's lots of different things on Bandcamp that you can actually look at, which is pretty cool. So there's lots of different backing tracks out there that you can take a look at. Rich says, are they downloadable without catching a virus? Yeah, if you're talking about the backing tracks, yeah, they're fine. Clayt says, I bought a new Martin and the strings are like playing Oh, rebarb recommendations on easier playing strings. Well, needless to say, you can go to a lighter gauge of string, and that's going to help you enormously. What I like are the Tommy Emmanuel Martin ones that have the flexible core. If you just look at Martin flexible core, that's what I like to play. Even having 11 gauge strings or even 12 gauge strings, they're actually very easy to play. So Rich says, go get your guitar plecked. Had mine done and now it feels detuned. Yeah, plecking it costs a lot of money, but it's an amazing thing to get done for sure. Hey, Terrence. Hey, Peter. Awesome. Joe, are you going to do more blues songs with Play Blues? Yep, absolutely. If you've got some ideas, Joe, for some specific styles of blues, that would help too, to let me know what kinds of blues. Telling me on the chat isn't really going to do me any good because I won't remember. But if you go to the Play Songs and you throw some suggestions in there, I'll be sure to look for your stuff, Joe, and see what kinds of stuff you're thinking about. But yeah, there's just literally 1,000 songs that I'd like to do, and I'm trying to get them all out there, but it just requires requires some time is all. But yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Some blues stuff would be great in there. Yeah. Throw some ideas in there, Joe. I would sure appreciate that. Okay. So anyway, as far as the Hughes and Kentner stuff, I think they're all really good. I for no other reason than I find the head really easy to go to band rehearsals, switch to stage, although I do use some other stuff on stage sometimes. Sometimes I'll use Kemper, sometimes I'll use Mezza Barba, sometimes I've got some custom amps that I use sometimes on stage. So I use different things on stage just depending on the situation I find myself in. But anyway, so let's go on. Christian has a question here. He says, I have a question about double stops in blues. Where is there for possibilities? Well, double stops can be used lots of different ways. Let me switch to a different sound here. So let's say you were going to be playing in G, right? So you're going to be in G and you're going to do some blues stuff. Kind of traditional double stop stuff is going to be like, you might do something where you bend. Things like that, right? Another double stop, a natural kind of double stop that happens like that. Right? There's another one where I'm not bending, I'm just playing a couple of notes. So there's lots of different things like that you can use. Like some typical ones that I tend to use are like, now again, I'm in G here, so like that one where I'm using 5 and 6. And then the 3s, these 5s, these 3s. And then you could use for your, you could slide in with your major third there. Or what sounds really cool is to use these two. Those are really cool. But then you've got other stuff, like you might come up here if you were in pentatonic. Usually any AC/DC song is going to give you a bunch of cool double stop stuff, but those are cool. But then you might use like they're called sixth licks, where... So let's say you're on a C chord, which is your 4 chord, right? You might use some stuff like that over that C, or your D chord. So there's lots of different kinds of double stops that you can have. Let me get back to the chat here so I can see you. Let's see here. Since there are any... Steve, are there any differences in the new course coming out versus the previous versions? Yeah, somebody else had asked that too. So we'll talk about that. And Scotty... Oh, hey, Scotty. Glad you could be here, buddy. Clayt, your blues course has helped me out so much. I'm glad to hear that. And Zager guitars. Francis, I've never tried a Zager guitar. So is that something that locally that you're able to try out, or is that something that you kind of have to just buy on hope? Because I've never, in Fargo or even in Minneapolis, I've never seen one, but that's cool. Anyway, so I'll get to your question about the course. So these double stops, there's lots of different ways that you can use double stops. Like I'll do things where I might tag and end. Like, let's say I'm on my 5 chord here, my D chord. Okay, so what I'll do is I might do something like that. Right, something like that. So there, again, they're all double stops because I'm using 2 notes at the same time. And remember, I will post this in the group, so if there's any things that you see and you go, hey, that would be kind of cool, that would be great. Joe says, your fellow YouTubers sing high praises for your teaching. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Yeah, there's a really great group of YouTubers out there that I've gotten to know and hang out with and all that kind of stuff. Good, Joe. Okay, well, remember, Joe, I'm going to be posting this in the VIP group. So then all you got to do is go on there and just watch me playing something. If you go, hey, that one's kind of cool, just stop the video and just watch what I'm doing and grab it. Oh, Francis says, I do not know I saw it on YouTube. Yeah, see, I don't know that. There's so many. What's great about 2019 is that there's so many great amp, pedal, guitar brands out there that are all, we can call them boutique, and they just small companies, which is really, really cool. And yeah, and some of these smaller companies become a little bit bigger, right? But you don't have to just, this is where I think if you remember last year, there was the big deal made about some newspaper saying that the sales of guitars are down, nobody's playing guitar anymore or something like that. I don't remember the whole deal, but I always thought what the deal was is people just aren't buying Gibson and Fender anymore, right? They're not just buying from the top 3 guitar companies. There's so many amazing guitar companies out there, and some of them are just under the radar. So, if you're Newsweek or something, how do you know about a Zager guitar, right? How do you know about Kiesel? How do you know about whatever these things are, Suhr guitars? They wouldn't. You would. They wouldn't. And so I think there's just been a transition of people going to smaller companies and trying out different things, trying different guitars and things like that, which is what makes like Gearfest at Sweetwater really great to go to, or, NAMM or something like that, where you can actually try out these different things. I'll have to look at Zager this year at NAMM and see if I find them. So, cool. All right, let's keep going here. Eric, I don't know if Eric is out there. Eric says, I've been playing for 8 months, thinking about getting an Ibanez S521 Ocean Blue guitar. I have severe nerve damage to my back, and I believe those are very thin, lightweight guitars. Your thoughts on this particular slim line of guitars? Well, again, I've never played an S521. There's so many different models out there, but I will say that you guys I don't have them sitting here, they're over there, but I've got a new Ibanez that is an S Premium, and it's really heavy. And then I got an Ibanez Axion, A-X-I-O-N, and it's really, really light. So to be honest with you, it kind of depends on which model you get, and I would definitely try them out or talk to, your salesperson or something to make sure that it is in fact light, because that S Premium I got is really heavy. Okay, where the Axion is super, super, super light. So they're different. Okay, let's see here. What is the status on the guitar that I was helping to design? I got the actual prototype, which I just did a little jam on last week. And that one, I think, is supposed to be ready to ship in November. And yeah, so it'll be kind of cool. That'll be another option that you have. Hopefully, the plan was to keep the cost down on that guitar. It's a bootlegger guitar. They're calling it the Royal. Or Royale. I think it's Royal, but yeah. So that one should be available very soon, and it plays really nice. The neck is a little bit thicker than what I'm comfortable with, but I think the general population probably likes the neck a little bit thicker than I do, which is why we went with that. And we went with kind of a Paul Reed Smith-ish kind of headstock with 3-on-3 instead of 6 in line like I do. I'm a fan of Paul Reed Smith. I'm a fan of a lot of different guitars, but there are certain things that, obviously I play Ibanez a lot, so there are certain things about the Ibanez that I really like, but I was always trying to keep in mind as we were working together to develop that thing, that it wasn't just about what I like. It would be more what would a general population like. Because if I was going to give you exactly what I like, you're going to wind up with an Ibanez with EMGs, and that's just not for everybody. You know what I mean? So again, our point was to try and make something that felt really good, that sounded really good. It had a lot of variation, and yet the cost was going to be effective. So Ricky, hopefully you're going to be able to see some more information on that very soon. I am going to do a little demo, talk about the guitar, talk about the specs a little bit, and hopefully I'll have that done. I'll make the video either this week or probably next week, but it'll be one of those two, Ricky. And I'll make sure and post it in the VIP group for you to see, okay? Let's see here. Moving on, we've got Mark Curtis. Let's see here. It sounds like, okay, so he's got a kind of a two-part question here. Yeah, you're welcome, Ricky. So the first part here, Mark says, are the multiple guitar band solos of, like, say, Lynyrd Skynyrd, is where this question comes from. Like in Freebird, the soloist at times plays the same riffs and then they drift away, which is absolutely true, and it does happen. And then, of course, in Freebird, there's actually a couple of different solos kind of going on at the same time. Are they in the same key on different parts of the fretboard? And the answer would be yes. They would most certainly be in the same key. When they are going for... are they going for the root note in each position? No, you're not always going for the root note. Like if they're playing a lick where they're going, right? Sorry, Rich just said, just had the Jeb DBK I bought decked out with EMGs. Look at you! Wow, that's cool. That's great. Well, that's cool. Yeah. One of my favorite guitars right there, the DBK. Yes. Well, that's cool, Rich. That's awesome. Anyway, let me get back to Mark here. So, Mark, you're not always, whenever you're soloing, it's not like you're always trying to go to the root note. You're not. You know, part of soloing is learning how to go away, right? It's a weird thing because you're trying to make connection to the chords, which is landing on the, or not landing on, but emphasizing the root, or maybe it's the third, or maybe it's the fifth, or something like that. And you're certainly trying to do that. But all the other notes that are not part of that triad are also incredibly important as well in the bigger picture. And that really is the secret here, isn't it? I mean, not that it's a secret, but the trick is trying to figure out how to use elements of your melody and then be able to use other notes that aren't part of that either. And a lot of the Freebird solo, when you're thinking about... right? It's a repetitive idea of creating these themes out of the licks, more so than melody. Although, and again, I can't say for sure that I'm playing this in the right place, but when I do this bend, I'm bending to the root. So that is a thing, but as they keep going and you do... and it keeps kind of going through all of these... Rich, you are my idol too. As it keeps going through all of these different licks and stuff like that, it just keeps kind of compounding. Now, every solo is different. Where that one really is just learning the end solo to Freebird is like learning every cool Southern rock guitar lick there is. And I've never actually learned it all the way through just because it's more time than I'm willing to give to the solo. Not that there's anything wrong with it. If you're learning it, I think that's wonderful. But, you know, for me, I spend 75, 80, 85% of my time jamming solos, other than like the key elements to the solos that I think are really important. Unless it's a solo that I look at and I go, man, that deserves all of my time. But that's the kind of player I am. We're all different that way. Some people like to, you know, emulate songs absolutely exactly. And players like me, we try and learn the most important parts of the song and then just kind of jam. But it depends on the song. You know, if I'm learning Battery by Metallica, I don't have a lot of room to jam the song. The song is the song. You know, there's not really a lot of space to try and screw around with the rhythm parts. Where the solo, some of it I'm going to do, some of it I'm going to do my own thing. So with that solo, they're definitely playing in the same key, and I've always found it really interesting that bands like the Rolling Stones or 38 Special or Leonard Skinner, or, I mean, there's a whole host of people we could mention, but how they kind of can be soloing at the same time, and then certain things, Eagles, and then certain things will kind of overlap. Like if you look at Hotel California, that solo, it seems very little of that solo was actually improvised. Now, I don't know the guys, I don't know what they say the story is, but needless to say, when they come together for the harmony, that's all mapped out. You don't just fall on something like that hoping that everything works out. Where maybe some of the other parts were kind of screwed around with. But there are other songs where sometimes when people are jamming, they'll have ideas. Hey, at this part, let's come together. And before that, let's just keep doing whatever. But when it gets to that spot, let's come together and you do this and I'll do this, which is kind of cool. So, yeah. Let's see here. So Paul, hey Paul, I don't know if I've seen. Oh, there he is. Paul says, I purchased your 2.0 version of Solos Made Easy. Can you briefly talk about the difference? The biggest difference, and this is another question that we had too. The biggest difference is that me, like you, my learning and studying never stops. Okay. So like every day I'm trying to learn something new, or I'm studying a new style of playing, or I'm studying a new artist, or I'm learning new ideas, or, a new element of theory. It never ends. That's why this is fun, is because I do the same thing you do. So what we do, and soloing is the topic of interest that really appeals to most people, especially that how do I solo, how do I make my solo sound good kind of thing, kind of in that area. The modes and things like that are a little bit further down the line. But that practical, how do I solo over blues? How do I solo over rock? How do I solo over, whatever the case may be? And how do I think in this one, I spent more time talking about melody and phrasing and some different new approaches to the fretboard that back when I did the first Guitar Solos Made Easy, I really wasn't even in that frame of mind. I wasn't, where now my thought process is so different. So that's why I wanted to go back and revisit it. Plus, after 3 or 4 years, the video quality gets kind of crappy because technology keeps going. Now I'm doing 1080p, and God knows when 4K is going to be the thing that everybody's doing, I mean, we're dabbling in it, but, and I know 8K is on the way, and it's like, it just never frickin' ends. So that was another thing too, is just trying to get something that didn't feel old, like me. But I think that was the big thing, was trying to make sure that I went through great detail of not only the scales that are useful in different situations, but really talking about trying to develop a proper sense of melody and some things like that. Phrasing, which the older I get, the more I am convinced that those really are some of the key elements, where 20 years ago, it was all about licks. Like everything was licks, And don't get me wrong, you still need to have guitar licks. But I just think that if you can learn to connect to the music on a musical level, phrasing, melody, that sort of thing, then you can implement licks and meandering and things like that in between some of those, and that's kind of where the good stuff is. Joe says, I like the old stuff, and I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, it's not that I don't like anything that I've done. I just keep trying to reconnect with, since I released the last one, we've got a lot of new GuitarZoom students. We've got a lot of new followers and new viewers. And so I'm not saying that it's better and it has all the stuff the other one didn't. I think my take is just a little bit different. But, if you like the old one, I think that's awesome, because I sure am proud of all of those guitar courses that I do. Perfect. Thank you, RJ. RJ says he's busy with Guitar Solos Made Easy, which is perfect. Rich says, I went down the rabbit hole of trying to learn every piece of every song and found I got nothing else accomplished and fell back on my Stine training. And I tell you, Rich, and I'm not being disrespectful to anybody, because my whole thing is that as long as you're happy with what it is that you're doing the right thing, right? I mean, who am I to tell you what you should be doing with your time? But especially with YouTube, you wind up realizing that there's players out there that are more than willing to spend 3 or 4 or 5 months trying to figure out one song absolutely verbatim the way the artist wrote it, the way the artist recorded it. And of course, you know, you could turn on just about any artist and watch them. I don't care if it's Slash, I don't care if it's Kirk Hammett, I don't care if it's Steve Vai. I mean, insert name here, John Petrucci for that matter. Whoever you like, very seldom do you see them go play live and every single thing is exactly the way it was on the recording. You know, things change over time. And so in my mind, because I've always been a live player, that was one of the things was that, you know, I always use the story of Randy Rhoads, which I always thought was really interesting with Crazy Train, because Crazy Train was one of those holy guitar solos to me. It was a perfect solo. And then to find out that when he played it live, he didn't play it the way he did on the album. You know what I mean? It was just sort of a whim thing that he did. And some parts of it he'd still do live, but then some parts he wouldn't. You know, and then you have maybe artists like Kiss, right? Where Kiss is probably less apt, and I'm not being mean because I'm a Kiss fan, but let's be honest. They're less apt to improvise because the songs are structured the way they are. That's the kind of players they are. That's the kind of music that they play. They know that their audience wants to hear it verbatim. Where Guns N' Roses, some parts are going to be verbatim and some parts are going to be whatever. And some are not even going to be close. Like Slash is going to be doing his whole thing. So you got to find where you need to be in there. So let me go back to that guitar player that's learning one song for 5 or 6 months to really nail it. That's become a goal of theirs. And I think that's wonderful. Okay. Kiss Army. That's right. I think that's wonderful. But in my world, like if you get a gig and now you've got to learn 50 or 60 tunes and you're going to play in a month or 2 months, you got work to do, right? So it's a little different for everybody in what our goals are. And what I've always tried to develop on the way on my guitar journey is me. I'm not, you know, I use other people's material to develop myself. That's what I try and do. So I'll use Randy Rhoads or Dimebag Darrell or Tommy Emmanuel or Joe Bonamassa or whatever for ideas that fit into the context of what it is that I'm trying to create for myself. So I don't want to just learn exact Joe Bonamassa licks, but I would like to learn some of the things that he's doing. I'd like to see a little insight into the way he thinks when he plays, because maybe that would work for me. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe I start learning it and it's not gelling with what I'm doing, but I've been playing long enough now to where I think I know going in, like I don't necessarily try and learn a whole song unless it's for play songs or it's for a band or just something that I really want to learn just because I like it. That's great. But oftentimes I'm trying to develop elements of myself. So I might be learning a song, but the reason I'm learning it is because I want to get a chordal voicing or I want to get a lick out of it that I thought was really cool. And Randolph says lots of work when you're just beginning, which is absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is you got to find where your comfort zone lies. Some people, they really don't jam. They don't improvise, right? Especially if they're in front of an audience. They want the comfort of being able to play something. And maybe you're not playing it exactly, but certainly you've possibly pre-constructed your idea of how you want to approach that song, right? Those are other things that you can do as well. So there's just lots of different ways, which is, to be honest with you, which is how Play Songs, that club that I've got, kind of works. Is some songs I try and do them as exact as possible, which is always weird for me because then I go back and go, wow, I never used to play it that way, right? But for you, I want to learn how to do it as exact as I can. And then there's other songs that trying to replicate, like if it has 4 guitar parts, sure, I'll do all 4 guitar parts, but if you're just jamming by yourself, you know, and you're not in a band, or if you're in a band but you're not in a band with 4 guitar players, your chances are you're not going to play all 4 guitar parts. So sometimes you want a way to kind of consolidate an idea so it's something that you could play on stage. Like I often have played in bands where I'm the only guitar player, a 3-piece band, for instance. So you learn how to play songs differently. So it's just something to think about a little bit. Again, I'm always trying to think about 2 things. Number one, I'm trying to think about you and me living in the real world, like real world situations that you're going to find yourself in. You know, even if you got hired by Judas Priest to play guitar for them, it's still a real world situation. And if you're not KK Downing, you're playing the guitar solos however you play them, right? As best you can, the way that works for you. Okay. And the second thing is who are you going to be in 5 years? I always think the 5-year plan, right? we can worry about right now, no doubt about it, but let's always have an idea of down the line, this is what I want to develop about myself. This is what I want to figure out. This is what I want to be able to do. And, those are just really important things for me. So let me get to some of this here. You're welcome, Paul. And let's see here. Randolph says, since I started with Guitar Zoom, I've started to play out at least once a month, and now I'm being invited to be a part of a band, which is what it's all about, Randolph. It can't just be about soloing or how intellectually advanced you are in theory or whatever. Music at its most basic level should be shared with others somehow, in some capacity, playing with other people, right? And if you want to elevate that to the next level and the next level, I think that's awesome, right? But it should be something along those levels at some point. That's what you should be doing. Let's see here. And Randolph says it's a lot of work when you're just beginning, which he's absolutely right. Let's see here. I'm more comfortable improvising. I've been playing the leads as close as I can, all by ear. Some of it improvised. Yeah, that's the thing, is you got to find your happy space there. I'll use an example. I was in a band a long time ago. We used to do Turn Up the Radio by Autograph. Now that solo, if you know the song, is a great solo. And it's so much fun to play that it's worth playing, right? But in order to play that solo, you got to kind of stay up on it. Like, it's got to become a practice routine, or you need to be performing a lot to keep it fresh, because you can't just improvise it. Like, it takes some work, right? You got to work at it a little bit. And any of those kind of songs where they require some of your extra effort, if you're performing, if you're in a band and you're playing every weekend, well, it might be enough to stay up on it. But if you only play once a month or once every couple months, you tend to forget those kind of solos. So that's the thing, is sometimes you get sick of going back to the same solo and going, crap, I got to relearn this again. You know what I mean? And so you got to figure out where you are with that. But yeah, I've always thought that solo was really fun to play. Francis says, when I watch some of these you kids play, I feel like throwing my guitar out the window. Well, yeah, you try and stay inspired more than frustrated, because we're all different. And, that's the thing is, well, I have a couple of questions I have to get to here, and you'll notice that everybody's on a different level when it comes to what we're looking for with guitar playing. David says, I seem to never play any song exact to the originator of the song. I play the song as I hear it in my musical hearing. Sometimes it's great, other times not so much. Yeah, and that's the thing, is sometimes you need to, sometimes learning some parts of the song really can help, because I learn most things by ear too, but sometimes it's worth digging in and going, oh, that's really cool. Well, now I might be able to use that, right, in my own playing or whatever. When I was in cover bands for many years, I was in many different bands doing many different things. I was in a couple original bands and like 3 cover bands, and I was playing in church and doing all these things all at the same time. And then all the jobs I had. And I had so much going on in my head that I never really had time to develop what I wanted to do on the guitar, because I was so busy performing and playing music, other people's music. Even the original stuff, of course, it was music that I was writing with other musicians. So once we had gotten it written, that was the song, right? So, and now it's nice because I don't have that many bands, and so I have more time to spend kind of exploring the things that I want to do as well. So it's nice to be able to go back and forth between those. Let's see here. How do I get my hands to sync together? I've been working at the 4-finger exercise for quite a while, and seem to be stuck at 100 beats per minute. Some of that stuff it takes a long time. It might take months. It might take years. The other thing is, Rich, is try different things. Try different kinds of patterns. Like maybe not just 4-note patterns, but 3-note patterns, right? Try something where you... And when you're doing these things, don't always worry about how fast it is. Like, the first thing that I always do is I try and warm up, right? I try and get my fingers going. And I'll just practice these things over and over and over. Over and over and over without a metronome, just trying to get my hands synced together for what I'm trying to do. Whether it's a sequential idea or whatever it might be. So I just try and get my hands going at first before I ever worry about the metronome. So sometimes that helps a little bit too. Okay, let's go back here and see what we've got next. Ian, let's see. Oh, I already got Ian. Ron says, have you considered doing a course on how to set up different musical styles on an amplifier, referring to the new amps with lots of presets? Well, I would like to do, I was thinking this winter, I wouldn't mind doing a course on how to use modern technology, how to use modern amps, and how to dial in sounds from that perspective, but not styles per se, because it's so subjective to everybody. I can take this amp and I can play metal, and then I can turn around and if I turn my noise gate down a little bit, then I can get different kinds of sounds. So it's so different for everybody the way this stuff works. Okay. Okay. But yeah, I'd like to do something where I talk about these amps and how they work and why you'd be interested in one over the other and that sort of thing, because it really can get overwhelming, but at the same time, it can be incredibly inspiring. Because again, in the old days, you had to have an amp that was really loud, and you could only play it at certain places because it was so loud, and you experienced volume, and that was kind of the rock and roll thing, where nowadays it seems very few people get to experience that element. We're always dealing with how, being in a studio or in a bedroom or something like that, and the sounds that we get. But the truth is that can be really inspiring as well, because a lot of these devices can just make incredible sounds at lower volumes, and sometimes that relates to louder volumes. It depends on how you're running these things. And again, that's where that kind of conversation might be good. Let's see. I would love to hear how you choose a basic setup to play at a medium event. A medium event is going to probably be my Kemper. Depends on the style of music that it is. And if I do my Kemper, then I probably wouldn't bring out because with the Kemper, you can do just about everything. Like you can have so many different kinds of delays and reverbs and all these different things all set up in one bank, one performance bank, and you can get everything in that one thing. Or what amp or tools to get basic tones. But if I wasn't with my Kemper, which is a whole other conversation, if I was just doing something like this, what I like to have is, the biggest thing for me is having a completely dry sound and then running external reverb and delay. Now this gets reverb and delay, and they're fine. Okay, but I like to be able to have pedals where I can hit my reverb and delay so I can decide how much I want. Right? So I can just get a little bit in there if I want something a little more David Gilmour-ish. Or even a little more reverb from there, right? Where I get... Okay, that sort of thing. Can you see my pedal board? No, but what I'll do, I'll tell you what, Jerry, I'll take a picture of it and I'll put it on the VIP group. I'll put it in there. So my pedal board is quite large right now for what I'm using it for one of my bands, but oftentimes what I'll do is I've got a smaller board too that I can strip some of these off of and stick on the smaller board. So right now this board's got a tuner, it's got the drop pedal, because sometimes I have to do things where I drop, and if I'm traveling, I don't want to bring 3 or 4 guitars with. It's just too much work. So the drop pedal's nice for some of that kind of stuff. And then I've got a harmonizer made by Digitech. It's called the Harmony Man, and I'll use that sometimes for harmonies and stuff if I'm the only guitar player. And then I've got a number of Strymon things. I'm a big Strymon fan, so plus I've got a Strymon artist thing, so I've got the Big Sky, the Timeline, and the Riverside that I use. So just different kinds of things like that. Chris says that's one of the things I love about the Helix. I can have multiple effects and amp controls right there. That's exactly it. I mean, and we're moving further and further that direction. Like this floorboard that I'm going to show you weighs as much as some of the amps. So hauling this back and forth to rehearsals, I would not do it. Okay, I have no interest. I might bring a couple of pedals off of it, but I'm not going to bring that thing, you know, where if I'm traveling, if I'm doing a small tour or something, I might use this, but then I've got people that are helping carry all this stuff in. But yeah, so anyway, this is more of a studio thing for me. You know, it's got wheels and all that stuff, so I can take it with, but you know, where this thing, what I can do then with this, I've got the exact same presets, but I've got them saved on another bank. So then when I go there, this is creating the delay and the reverb, and I don't need to bring the pedal board with. Now, I can't change the delay and reverb without changing the thing and maybe saving some more presets or something. That's the one disadvantage, right? Where if I've got my delay and reverb pedals separate, I can control those anytime I want with the sound that I'm getting at that current moment in time. And again, a lot of the stuff like Axe Effects and Helix and Kemper and all these things, they do the same things. You can have all of those ready at will, which is a really cool trade-off. Because after a while, what happens is, in my opinion, and again, I don't want to talk your ear off, but you wind up owning all these different amps and all these different pedals and all this different stuff, and it's like, well, which one are you going to take for what, right? Or sometimes it's nice to have all of that compact in just one situation. Now, you might be saying, well, I never use effects anyway. Well, then that's great. Then you don't have anything to worry about. But for me, it depends on the band I'm playing in. I mean, it's fun sometimes to have a really nice kind of washy solo. You know, I can have some... You know, something like that, whatever it might be. And then if I need to go completely dry... You know, I can go right into something like that too. So, can you use BAS? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Francis. Okay, let's see here. Mike, can you distinguish the lead guitar player from the rhythm guitars and others as you listen to songs on YouTube? I find it challenging to try and learn the songs with several guitars playing. Yeah, that's the hard part, isn't it, Mike? Is trying to figure that out. I mean, this is a whole nother conversation, but if I'm learning a song that I'm going to play with a band and I'm the only guitar player, or there's two of us or something like that, what I try and do, let's start with me just being the only guitar player. What I try and do is choose out, as I'm listening to the song, choosing the parts that are most important to the structure of the song. Not just, this is rhythm and this is lead. It's not really that. It's, what do I need to play for the audience to listen to hear what they need to fill that space? If there's only a bass player and I'm always playing noodly parts, there's never a chord underneath, right? Unless the bass player is playing chords, which sometimes the bass player in the bands I play in, or bass players, will do that. They'll chord some elements because at that point I'm doing something else. So we would always restructure the songs to make it function in front of an audience. So I never listened to songs going, oh, that's Dave Murray's part or Adrian Smith's part from Iron Maiden. I just listened and went, what is it that I need to play at this moment in time so the audience it's fat and it's filling up, or it's melodic because it needs that part, right? So different kinds of things like that. And if there's two guitar players, then it becomes a little bit easier because, you know, like most of the time in the bands I play in, you know, I might play with a band that lives 5 hours from me, right? So we work remotely. Like I tell them, you know, I'll work with the guitar player, I'll make videos of what I'm playing and they can see what I'm doing, and then they'll send me videos of what they're doing. But we always have a conversation beforehand. Hey, you take all the high harmonies, I'll take all the lower harmonies, and we're done, right? So anytime we're learning songs, if there's a high harmony and a low harmony, I'll take the high harmonies or vice versa. Okay, that's covered. Then what we'll do is if we come across parts of songs where there's like multi-layered things, there's like 6 guitars going on, then we'll respond with each other and go, what should we do here? Do we want to just skip that? Do you want to do the melody? There won't be a harmony, but I can cover the chords underneath? Yeah, let's try that. Okay, cool. So we get all that figured out, so by the time we get together and rehearse, we've already learned all these parts. We just need to play together. We've already discussed everything and planned it out. Now, when we rehearse, we might decide, you know what, that might be better if we didn't have a rhythm guitar player, if we actually harmonize that, or let's scrap that melody entirely and let's both just play that rhythm section to really fill that out. But we won't know until we rehearse together. You know, in our minds, we think we've got it figured out, but sometimes it takes that rehearsal to figure that out. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. Oh, can you use bias effects by itself? You can. I actually have the bias amp, which is the bias amp. It's not the bias effects version. It's the bias amp that doesn't have any effects, but then I'll run my floorboard. So the bias amp is a great little amp, and it's got a power amp built right into it, which is really cool. Super light, really easy to transport. That's a super cool thing too, which I completely forgot about. But, you know, using, like, if I ever used a computer on stage, using bias effects or something like that, no, I haven't. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I haven't gotten to that place yet, because with Kemper and all that kind of stuff, there's really no need. So I'm not there, but I have seen people do those sorts of things. And that gets into a conversation about FR speakers versus guitar cabinets and that whole thing, which is a whole nother conversation, which we won't have time for right now, but I would definitely love to get into that conversation with you. Let's see here. I haven't quite found the sounds of the Strymon or the Eventide. I've got an Eventide H9 here too. You're right, and those really are unique. I mean, that's why I fell in love with the Strymon Big Sky and the Timeline, is they really are, especially the Big Sky. It's just, they're really unique sounds that are different than just a regular delay and reverb. But if I'm doing a gig and I don't want to carry all my crap, or it's a short, you know, I don't have a lot of time, that sort of thing, whatever I'm running in those things are going to be good enough. Here. Rich says, I heard the Axe FX is complicated. Well, it's more complicated than I care for. I love some of the sounds that come out of the Axe FX, but for me, Kemper just makes more sense in my world, because it's just easier to, it's like dialing in an amp. It's really straightforward, and the sounds are impeccable and that sort of thing. Yeah, Axe FX is more like a computer system, but again, it does amazing work. Yep, Boss Katana, I've got a Katana too, which is a cool amp. I wouldn't use it on stage, but that's just me. You might be able to get amazing sounds from it for stage. And again, I think it's all great. I love 2019 because there's so much crap for us guitar players to buy and explore and just be inspired by. So many different things out there. So the Katana is a practice amp that I use upstairs when I'm not in my studio, and it's my go-to for practicing. I think it's great. So anyway, well, hopefully that helps you a little bit. Let's see here. Avery, sorry, I'm going to try and get to Avery here. This might sound silly in a sort, but could you ever do a tutorial on putting new strings on the Floyd Rose? Sure, I could. That would be just fine. I've got a Floyd Rose locking system. Yeah, I'll show you how I do it. I'm not saying it's the way everybody else does it, but I would totally show you how I do it. So Randolph says, I'm not happy, looking for something better. Oh, well, Randolph, there's a lot of options for you, and I agree. I think the Katana is a cool practice amp. I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. I think there's other stuff that's better for me out there, but it all depends on what you're looking for. Okay? So, okay, cool. Well, it looks like we got everybody as best I can. I've got to get ready for my next live session. I'm sure some of you will be there as well. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm gonna put this video and a picture of my floorboard in the VIP group for you guys. Okay? So take care. Have a great evening, morning, whatever time it is for you. And take care, stay positive, and of course, keep practicing, okay?